order. We've got roll call. That's already taken care of, I believe.
Yes, everyone is present.
All right, then we'll move on to item T, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for the April 23rd, 2020 meeting of the Green Bay Housing Authority?
I'll make the motion.
Motion, is there a second? I'll second. So we have a motion and a second. Any additions or modifications to the agenda? All right, hearing none, all in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
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 Aye. All right, motion carries. Any objections? No. All right, motion carries. Item D, approval of the minutes from the March 12th, 2020.
Motion to approve.
Meeting.
I'll second.
All right,
This was
motion and
Sandy.
second. Any additions or corrections?
Nope.
All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? All right, motion carries. On to regular business. Consideration of, with possible action to approve Baker Tilly as a consultant to the GBHA in the rehabilitation of Mason Manor. That documentation is in your packet. Cheryl, if you want to just give everybody an update as to where we are with that.
Okay, so you recall at the last meeting, as a board, we decided to go out to seek a consultant to look at how we're going to best manage the redevelopment at Mason Manor. So we know that's going to be a substantial rehabilitation there. So we went out for RFP and we received one proposal that came in from Baker. It was actually a partnership proposal that came in from Baker Tilly and Gorman and Company. Gorman being a developer who's worked on these projects a lot in the past. So we had a team put together through purchasing because we ran this through purchasing. And so Bill Vandecastle, Jamie, Calvin, who was the purchasing agent, and then myself did an RFP scoring of the proposals that came through, ranked them very high. We did a consensus scoring, and I think our point, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill or Jamie, I want to say they came up at 90 out of 100. You know, both of these companies have many, many years of experience in this type of work. They've worked with many communities. I feel they're both very capable companies to do this type of work. One question we had as a team, though, was that our goal as the board was to hire the consultant to make sure that the needs of the board were met primarily first. Like we wanted to be advised as a board as to what our best mechanism was. If we need to set up a separate LLC, if, you know, what type of tax credit would benefit our agency the most. So we actually had a subsequent meeting then with Baker Tilly, Don Bernards, and Ted Mackham from Gorman. And they are both here today as well. So if we need to open up the floor, we can do that. And just to clarify on how this might work for us as the Housing Authority. And what we came out of that, and you'll see that in your packet, is an addendum to this contract, which is laying out for us the fact that Baker Tilly is really the consultant agency for us that's going to work with us on a pro forma. It's going to tell us as a housing authority what the best mechanism is for us to get this remodel completed, knowing that Baker Tilly uses Gorman and Company for their expertise in development. So I think what we're looking for today is really the approval to go forward with Baker Tilly as our consultant, knowing that this end product is probably going to result with the development, with a partnership, I should say, with Baker Tilly, Gorman, and the Green Bay Housing Authority. So with that, I'm wondering, do you want to hear from Baker Tilly or anyone from Gorman based off of the documents that we sent out to you?
Anybody have any questions?
I guess I mean, so they made a point to chime in. I'd certainly like to hear from them if I can make a motion to open the floor.
I will second that motion. So we've got a motion and a second to open the floor. questions? Otherwise, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the floor is open. Go ahead.
So I don't know, Don, if you want to start maybe?
Sure. No, thank you. Thank you first and foremost to all of you on the board and staff and so forth. You've obviously put a lot of thought into this. Kaylin Scopeline, my colleague, was here on the call as well. We came up and met, I don't know, was it maybe last fall or summer? I forget.
Yeah.
To provide a little education. And that's kind of what we are really about is, and part of the reason we had a follow-up meeting is really, right, this is new to you, and there's different, a lot of people are talking about RAD, and I know we had a really specific discussion that it's RAD and maybe other repositioning tools. So it's not a foregone conclusion that RAD is it. There's Section 18, mixed finance, and that's, and like Cheryl said, how do we structure these? What are we going to look like after the transition? So that's, Caitlin and I have worked with over 30 housing authorities the last 5 years. This business working with organizations such as yourself. So we really applaud you, looking to move forward, what tools are available, and we're very excited to be part of the team. So not sure, Ed or Caitlin, you want anything to add?
Well, Gorman and Company, this is Ted Matcom. I'm the Wisconsin market president for Gorman and Company and their general counsel. We submitted with Baker Tilly as a response to the RFP. The RFP seemed to include some components of development, which would be, what's the developer fee split, and certain packages that Don is an expert in terms of getting through RAD and the Housing Authority HUD process really do require kind of the perspective of the developer and maybe the general contractor if they are combined as one, and we propose that we would be combined as one because of the fact that we really think that at the end of the day you have to sell tax credits through WIDA to finance this deal to the extent that it really needs, Mason Manor needs to be updated. You need some WIDA tax credits, I think, to do that. And we are experts in going through that application process, actually getting the tax credits that you would need to finance the deal, selling it to an end user, and entering into a partnership with the Green Bay Housing Authority and that end user for this project to happen. So that's why we've done many projects with Baker Tilly around the country with public housing authorities. We have a great perspective together. We have a great team. It just so happens that we're both in, Madison together in Wisconsin. It's great. And we actually did a project very similar to this with Baker Tilly, which was the CDA, and the Wausau CDA had us renovate, which is their public housing component there. And it would be a very similar process as we foresee as this project would be. Financing might be different, as Don said. There's a multitude of possibilities that we could explore, but we feel like we're a very good team in terms of bringing you, the board, to where you need to be to have Mason Manor be the best place for your residents. And be open to answer any questions you guys would have.
I'm curious as to what the actual deliverable of your consultant services are. Like what tangible thing will we have when our agreement is closed between our entities?
I think with what I think was in your board packet, kind of we really have kind of eight steps, and some of it is intangible, some of it is like really I think will be education. I think you, the staff, probably board will have questions, so some of it is just thank you, Cheryl. We'll be answering questions. Part of it actually will be a financial pro forma, looking at probably as Ted mentioned, I mentioned if it's RAD, if it's Section 18, if it's just mixed finance. I mean, so really part of it probably will be some financial models that you, staff, and board can kind of review. I'm trying to think if there's any other deliverables. Actually, I think some of the deliverables are if RAD or other repositioning tools are chosen, there will be actually actual applications to HUD, actually part of this first step, because even if you're going to pursue tax credits, and tax credits would be in December of 2020. but there would be several HUD applications before that. And so actual applications would be another deliverable. I think primarily education, financial models, and then actual applications, the HUD would be the direct deliverables from this first phase.
And then just to mention, I wanted to mention the fee. We're looking at a $25,000 fee working through Baker Tilly, with them basically billing us monthly. But that being said, if we move forward through the development process and we're able to put this deal together, part of those costs could be it could be part of the development project themselves. So they'd be included in that development project. They wouldn't be like cash out of our till directly.
So we can apply the same tax credits to that spending that we would be applying to the whatever comes of the study in the first place. Okay.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, Ted, you had mentioned that developer and contractor is not abnormal in this particular situation. Can you talk a little bit about how we would I would say defend public spending in a bid environment for that sort of scenario?
So it's important, the way the RFP was issued, and this would be absolutely your discretion and your intent, so we'd want to play with that 100%. But the way Baker Tilly and Gorman responded was for the Green Bay Housing Authority to have procured, which is kind of a term of art of HUD, procured a developer and a consultant. So Baker Tilly would be your consultant. You're agreeing today for a $25,000 contract that would not involve us technically. It would just be Baker Tilly and the Green Bay Housing Authority. Cheryl and staff thought that was an essential type of arm's length transaction kind of from Gorman to say, hey, Baker Tilly, let's go with the Green Bay Housing Authority and figure out what's best for the Green Bay Housing Authority. And then if you were to proceed with a tax credit application that's still pending, like nobody knows if you're going to really do that or not, but we're thinking this is where it's going, then the Green Bay Housing Authority would then make a decision to hire a developer, okay? And that would be like a Gorman and Company.
Yep.
And a developer would typically, in this scenario, have a construction arm. We have an architect arm as well. And the reason you do that is because you have to have certain HUD requirements for accessibility, environmental, just HUD regulations that you have to follow in order to have the project be HUD compliant. And then you also have to have work components like Section 3, it's called, MBE, WBE, which is Minority Business Enterprises, involved in literally the work of the building to help those type of entities succeed, which are disadvantaged. And so Section 3 is disadvantages business and individuals. And MBE and EBE are firms that are out there that are registered as minority business or women business, or in the state it's called special business entities. So all of those would be incorporated into training them within this whole workforce environment for Mason Manor. It's a perfect project to do it because you're not going from ground up, you're just rehabbing units. So it's an amazing training tool. So Gorman and Company literally is an expert in that, in taking all of those components and putting them into a workforce, which we did at Wausau as well, and training all those people per HUD requirements. So that's why it's very important to kind of have your developer be your construction arm, because of the fact that those workforce components have to work hand in hand to make a successful project.
Thank you.
Did that answer kind of what you're asking?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we're not making a decision on that today.
Correct.
I'm just trying to get my head around the relationship between your two entities as we continue to move forward.
Right.
And Steve, that is something that when we met with the purchasing agent with regards to the bidding out and how this all worked, we asked them, what is your comfort level? What is the purchasing agent's comfort level with regards to how we're proceeding forward with this concept? And he felt like we were okay going in that direction, knowing that the board, this is step one for our board. So we're going to have to come back to this board once we have everything, the proposal basically on how we want to do this. We'll have to come back to the board for approvals. So this is not like, this is the first step on, I think, many steps.
Totally understood.
Yep.
So this is Sandy. So what I'm looking at on page 53 is the proposal timeline. So is that 25,000 that we're looking at? Is that going to be, you said billed out monthly, but it's starting in May 2020. Then it'll take like a year and a half approximately to finish out is what is anticipated?
I think a lot of this work and kind of how we maybe restructure this a little bit, a lot of this work will be really up until probably the fall to early winter of 2020.
Okay.
And then we would kind of move into it then if tax credits were pursued, other financing. So this really kind of gets us through a HUD type of application to help with the repositioning strategy. If not, then the next phase of, kind of applying for resources or closing on financing. So really probably it's now through really maybe towards the end of this year.
Okay.
I almost feel like we're going to need to move on this pretty quickly if we want to make that application before the end of the year.
We
I think
would.
there's going to be a lot of work that's going to need to be done in the next 3 or 4 months, right?
Right, we would, because you want to mobilize. There's some things to do. Again, RAD Section 18. There's probably maybe a month or 6 weeks to kind of get the board. There's a couple tenant meetings, board approvals, the actual applications to HUD. 2 to 3 months for HUD to approve. So we'll want some of these things done. Again, if tax credits are the route, by November timeframe. So you would want to start very, very soon.
Yep.
Did that answer your question, Sandy?
Nope, that was it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Nope.
If not, is there a motion to close the floor?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the floor. Any further discussion? Otherwise, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so we're back to consideration of possible action to approve the agreement with Baker Tilly as consultant to GBHA for the rehabilitation of Mason Manor. Any questions for Cheryl or staff on any of this? Otherwise, is there a motion to approve that agreement?
I'll make
I
that
make the
motion.
motion.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
By Sandy, a second. We have a second by Terry, I believe. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion has passed unanimously. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And then we'll be in touch, Don, to set
Perfect.
whatever we need to get set up.
Very
Thank you,
good.
Don.
Thank you for
Thank you.
coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Don.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, so that being concluded, we'll move on to item F, informational, GBHA bills. And that information is in your packet. Any questions? No? One more time, any questions on the bill?
Nope.
All right, so I guess we can just move on then to item 2, the financial report. Stephanie?
That was also in your packet. Are there any questions that anyone has?
Anything out there that we should be aware of that's different, or is this just normal?
Just normal. The only thing is that we did have a draw from PWG I think I actually talked about this last month too. So that is the over in the rail yard for the project that's going on over there. So that's something that hit our budget, but other than that, nothing really. It's all, we're trying to go as normal as pop right now.
Okay.
All right. Any further questions for Stephanie? All right, we'll move on to item number 3, the Langen report. Any questions on Langen's report that's in your packet? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 4, the director's report. Sarah.
All right. Well, you may have heard we've had a little bit of a pandemic in town. I've been working myself. I've been working through our department on trying to make sure that our homeless population has a place to safely stay in place. I've been talking with Terry as well with her work at the shelter. It's a difficult time now for people who don't have a place to stay. It's
Right.
bad for the community, right? For people just kind of roaming around, but it's also bad if you don't have a place where you can be safe. So I've been spending a lot of time working on with the shelters to try to get coverage that way. I think there's over 400 cases now in Brown County, which unfortunately we just had the largest increase, I think, in the state.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's just a spurt and we can start leveling out. But I see us, probably maintaining. I see our next GBHA meeting being this way in May, for sure. So I think at Mason Manor things have been okay. I don't believe we have any confirmed cases at Mason Manor. Of course, you remember we closed off the public bathrooms on the floors. We've encouraged people to not have lots of visitors. We encourage people to stay in place. We've actually had to remove some furniture out of our common areas just to not encourage people to congregate in those public areas. The food program has been suspended, and I believe they're delivering to the tenants yet, but there's no community food program in the major room. Is there anything I'm leaving out here, Jamie, with regards to Mason Manor?
No, I think you covered it pretty well.
Jamie, this is Sandy. Is anybody been asking you to help them with applying for the stimulus benefits if they don't have things automatically deposited? Or have they come to you to say, what do I do if I need to get this? Because now I'm getting, so many of the consumers we work with are having to have delivery for groceries, having to pay for different ways for transportation. So we're glad they're getting that infusion of funds in. We also have funding. Options received some grants from the Green Bay Community Foundation and a private source to help fund that for some people that may not have gotten that stimulus check or just for some reason can't figure out how to become eligible. So you can absolutely send people our way if their expenses are just getting to be too great to have those things continue. So if they need a month of grocery delivery costs or something like that, we can assist with stuff like that. If they're feeling really isolated and they have Wi-Fi, if they're looking for an Echo device or some type of device, we can assist. What we're trying to do, because we're not quite sure how setup would go for these devices for some people, be okay with setting it up with one of our IL coordinators on the phone. And, because we're not up for them. But just we're trying to figure out ways to reach, with this funding, to reach individuals, especially those that are feeling even more isolated than normal as a result, and maybe don't have any family that's calling them on a regular basis and connecting via some of the platforms that are out there. If we can get them an Echo Show or an iPad or something like that that could assist them. But I'm just wondering if you're hearing that from anybody, Jamie. You might not be hearing that they're all doing just fine.
Well, we still have a pretty social building that we're trying to really stop the congregation. But we have a staff that we contract with, Lutheran Social Services, and she's really helping a lot of our tenants, as you can imagine, the employment has significantly been affected, whether they're at restaurants or stores. So she's really doing a great job helping our tenants apply for like unemployment benefits, getting that stimulus information into the government or their checking, savings account numbers. This has probably affected, at least I would say, between Mason Manor and scattered sites, half of our tenants where their income has been affected. So on our end, processing rent changes and trying to get all the information to our tenants as quickly and fast as possible, find other resources, because we've all come together as a team to really help our tenants out during these times.
Sure. So that's another thing our funding can be used for. If they're behind on their utilities and don't want to be way far behind when this ends and they can go back to work, having to make that up probably isn't going to be a possibility. So paying some of those. So just an FYI out there, we want to get this funding out quickly. So staff are having to use options credit cards to do that quickly versus always having to write out. But it is a possibility for individuals. The other thing, Cheryl, I wanted to ask is you're talking about the homeless population. We've gotten several calls on people looking for places to live, and we're finding out that the vouchers aren't being issued right now. So what's happening with that through Brown County?
I put a call into Patrick Leifker with regards to that. I think he had said that they were starting to open up the offices. That would have been last week, at least, because I don't think anyone was even in the offices originally, but I think they were starting to slowly start to reopen those offices. Okay. So, there are some directives that have come down from HUD, which are giving some waivers for some of these things with regards to that annual inspection and pushing those out. I know we have some waivers with regards to evictions. I think there's a moratorium on evictions for the state of Correct. But also through HUD. There's no evicting, like we can't evict tenants right now through HUD for non-payment of rent. I think we still can, Jamie, right, if there's like drug or dangerous activity, but we have a number of tenants, I'm sure, that are behind on rent that, I'm hoping that HUD just allows us maybe to do waivers on these. So, okay. But I can't speak to the vouchers through Brown County. I'm not sure. And I just spoke with a rep from HUD talking about some other things that might be coming down the line. There is a potential maybe of additional vouchers that might be coming. So I think they're looking at the whole voucher system and how best to manage that now, because they still don't want people going in the houses, right? But there's got to be a way to waive maybe those inspections or some of those things.
Right. Well, I know we've had calls for people coming up on their review. Where's our review paperwork? This is normally where I get it. I'm worried. I don't want to get behind on this. I don't want to all of a sudden have to do all of this like 2 weeks before my review. So I have reached out to Patrick too and got some information there. But truly it is, if they're not releasing any vouchers right now because staff aren't in the office, and that's what Pat told me, the calls that we had were people that were eligible for vouchers, but they just weren't issuing them. Not even know if they even had a place to go to with that voucher. So are people actually looking at apartments right now? I don't know, but they didn't even have a voucher in hand to go look. So yeah.
We also are getting questions about the vouchers and if indeed ICS was closed down, because they thought, our case managers thought that they were closed down, but there was still evictions happening. And I think that was a speculation. I don't know that
there shouldn't be. Yeah.
I feel like that wasn't that a governor's wasn't that a moratorium from the state of Wisconsin?
Yes. There's one overreaching.
I was gonna say there's a moratorium, and the courthouse is only open for like very high level criminal cases right now. So the courthouse isn't even accepting like small claims eviction court cases.
Okay. I think people are wondering what.
I think that those cases can be filed. They just aren't getting a hearing date.
Say that again, Bill. I didn't hear that.
I think cases like eviction things you can file them, but they're not going to get a hearing. So all that stuff is filed electronically now, so that can still be done. but you're not going to get a hearing date.
Right.
Yeah.
They're just not giving you dates. You file them, but it's an open-ended date.
Right.
I have a off-topic question. If we as an authority should be considering anything on the facilities level to implement at Mason Manor, like heightened attention to the HVAC or an ionization machine to ensure that we're getting clean 100% outside air working properly. I'd be interested to see if any of our peers are taking some precautionary steps on their facilities, especially from an HVAC standpoint. If there's something that we should be proactively pursuing.
Jamie,
So
could you go ahead?
So I don't have the engineer lingo, but I know we have like 2 giant fans on our roof that circulate all of our air.
Heck yeah, giant fans.
It's these giant fans, I know, on each side, and they are open and they circulate all of like our hallway air.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like thin air that's not getting fresh, but we do have those, I know, and those are open and I can feel them when I'm walking the halls.
Okay.
You know, certainly though, that's interesting that you say that, Steve, because who would have thought about, like when we're looking at remodeling a building, like you're not thinking about Legionnaire's disease, right? Or respiratory, like you're not thinking that way. So that's probably something we need to look at when we look at the whole renovation, is making sure that those systems are in place that, you know, are protecting tenants.
Yeah, I would say as a influence on my industry in particular, we're asking those questions on stuff that's currently on the boards. You bet. Like, should we change the norm? I don't mean those kind of like 30,000 foot view for specifically here. I'm wondering if we should, make sure the louvers are opened up and cleaned and we're getting the air changes that we kind of need to keep fresh air around, I guess is sort of the.
Well, we can certainly, Jamie, you can certainly have David follow up on that and make sure that that's being maintained and cleaned.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I have a question. We talked about Mason Manor, but how are there any issues there? And then the other question I have is that, we're going through all this shutdown and stay at home and all those sorts of things, but life still goes on and things break. So I'm wondering, for example, going into a room at Mason Manor or going to a scattered site to do repairs or to fix things and those kinds of things. How's that happening now under these new rules?
I didn't hear your first question, Bill. Could you repeat the first thing you said?
The first one was just about how things are going at sites. We talked about Mason Manor, but how's it going to scattered sites?
And I think Jamie can talk to that because I know we ordered equipment, masks and stuff for our staff to make sure they're protected when they go in.
Still going in?
For emergency work orders, yes, they are.
Okay.
So, I mean, majority of our units are single family homes. So we don't need to safer at home. There's sheltering in place. Like Cheryl touched on, we were able to get like 3 of the higher level masks from Grainger before they were completely sold out. And our guys are doing the emergency work orders are coming up, and one
of the reasons I brought this up is just as an aside to this, my garage door broke the other day, and we had to have the garage door company come and fix it so we could get our cars out of the garage. They actually asked us to leave the house when they arrived. So they called us and they said, we'll be there in 5 minutes. Please leave the house, and then we'll call you when we're done. So that there was nobody that they had any contact with. You make a payment with a credit card and that kind of thing, but we actually had to be out of the house, even though they were working in the garage, but they had to come into the house to check the wiring and those things as well. So, I'm just wondering if that's some kind of a protocol that might be effective for people in their rooms at Mason Manor, or people on the scattered sites, is to have them step out of the house for a half hour or whatever while the repairs are taking place. Okay.
Jamie, did you hear that?
Yep. I don't think we've really run into that problem necessarily per se. I think it would be hard to ask our scattered sites to leave because they are family housing, and we're like, they can't even go to a playground. They can't go to school. Yeah.
They go in their vehicle.
And so, yeah, they just sit in the vehicle. Most of the issues that we've had are plumbing, which are coming from like the basement, or water heater issues. So distance, they're not working like in the same room as our tenants. I think our tenants are pretty cognizant, and our guys are very open about, you need to back up, you need to give me space. But a lot of our issues have been coming from the basement, and so there's nobody else down there with them.
Okay, good.
So for the most part, I believe we're very limited on what we're going to go into a property for. It's got to be kind of a health and safety type of thing for us to go in there. Otherwise, we're kind of letting it go until it's safe again.
All right, very good. Any questions for Cheryl on the director's report?
I just wanted to say one more thing, Bill.
Yes.
I'm looking at spending some money. It won't be a lot of money, but we need, working from home, we're going to need some laptops. So right now, Jamie does not have a laptop. She actually had to move her entire system from work to her home, which of course means she doesn't have one at work. I mean, when we start going back, here's my fear. When we start going back to work and this spikes up again, and then they send us all home again, I want our staff to be geared up and ready to go. So I have ordered a laptop through the city that I think the Housing Authority will pay a small portion of. But then I think Stephanie Schmutzer and Jamie Valentine should have laptops as well available to them. So if we need to do this again, they're set up with work computers. So those are going to be about $1,300 a piece. And then it's going to take about 4 to 6 weeks potentially to get them.
Wow. We ran into the same
Us too.
that people needed laptops at home, and also we have remote access, so you can go in and it's just like sitting at your desk. But yeah, it's tough if you don't have that. I learned that we're going to start budgeting for laptops every year now, just for that reason. We had to purchase 2, I believe. So yeah, that's a necessity.
I don't have any issue with that either. I think that's a wise pre-planning for the future. Yeah, go ahead.
Do we need to vote or anything on this, or is it?
I don't
just...
have it on the agenda, but I have the authority to spend up to $5,000.
Okay.
I believe so, but I wanted to let you know that if you had said no, I wouldn't do it. But
No, I think it. Yeah, I think it's common sense. So
I don't think we've ever reviewed computer purchases for staff at a board level as long as I've been sitting on. I don't know why it would be any different. Whatever you think, Cheryl, is fine.
Yep.
And we do have some funds in the current budget to cover this too.
Awesome.
we are working on next year's budget as well, so that'll be coming down the pike for you. Sure.
Okay.
All right, I'm done now for sure.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to our next agenda item.
All right, that is also in your packet. We are pretty status quo right now. People don't want to move during this pandemic. So we did have a lease up yesterday, today, and we are practicing social distancing. So Kaz doing like virtual lease ups, getting them the paperwork and then going through it through the phone, and then getting keys and paperwork remotely. So there's no meetings in-house. So we are keeping on, because HUD says we have to continue to lease up if we have vacant units. So that's what we are doing.
So you have 100 people who have applied on the wait list for one bedrooms?
Any applicants on our waiting list, yes, at this time.
Wow.
Man,
One of the pluses with some of this HUD money that's coming down the pike is for COVID is that we may have the opportunity to partner with some agencies to actually maybe acquire some property that can be used, during this pandemic for housing purposes, but eventually kind of morph into that transitional housing piece we need,
Right.
with that really, really affordable housing. We say
Yeah.
affordable housing and that's really a pendulum of price, but we're talking about people that are coming directly out of homelessness that need that supported housing. We need a lot of that. So I'm
Yes.
hoping that as a result of some of this money coming in, that we're able to create some additional units. That'll help us out.
Absolutely. Great.
that'll be awesome.
Any further questions on the occupancy? All right, very good. I think we are ripe for adjournment at this point. So thank you all for going through this, and Cheryl, thank you and your staff for setting this up, even though I screwed it up trying to get connected here. But thank you all for setting this up. I know it's not easy, and everybody stay safe. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion. So we can start raising our hand.
Second.
Yeah, there we go. All right, so we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you all. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, staff.
Thank
Stay
you all.
safe, all.